Okay, good evening, everyone. For the sake of our audience on Zoom, I believe our Zoom meeting is up and running. Is that correct? And we have our team docents over there. You can't see them, but they're there happily answering any questions on Zoom. So I want to begin by welcoming everyone who's here tonight in person. And for those of you who are joining us on Zoom, thank you so much. I am Dr. Elizabeth Ward. I'm the Executive Director of the Los Altos History Museum. And sound tech, is everything okay, Danya? Everybody's hearing everything? Okay, excellent. Well, these hybrid events are always a little bit of a challenge, so you never know. But I am excited to have such a nice crowd both here in person and on Zoom. So thank you for joining us here tonight. I want to begin with a land acknowledgement. We are here on the ancestral homelands of the Muwekma Ohlone, a nation they call Thamien. I always like to talk about the links between Ohlone culture and what we today are doing here at the Los Altos History Museum. I think our conversation here about how to age in place and how to have a multi-generational experience and living environment is something that our Ohlone predecessors would have appreciated, and we probably could have learned a few things from them. And they are still with us here today. We're honored at the Los Altos History Museum to have a good relationship with the tribal leadership of the Muwekma Ohlone. So thank you for joining us here tonight. This program is part of our public offerings in support of our current exhibition, Every Wrinkle Tells a Story. So if you haven't seen the exhibition yet, it's here on display until May 8th. And admission is always free at the Los Altos History Museum. We're open Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday from noon to 4. So do come by when you have a chance. And now it's my pleasure to introduce our two panelists and, of course, our moderator for the evening. So, yeah, it's just exciting to have you both with us here tonight. Thank you so much for coming. Yeah, so next to me here is Dr. David Klein, who is the CEO of Empathy, Inc., a business exploring new ways to help people age in place. That's a nice way of saying they build ADUs. So we're going to hear more about that today, too. He contributes to CAFE, the Center for Age-Friendly Excellence, and serves as a commissioner on the Los Altos Environmental Commission. So thank you very much, David, for being here tonight. We also have Mandy Brown with us. Thank you, Mandy. It's so nice to have you here tonight. She is a management analyst at the city manager's office for the town of Hillsborough. So she made a little bit of a drive down here tonight. Thank you so much for joining us. She focuses on communications, sustainability, emergency preparedness, and town-wide special projects. So we're going to hear a little bit about how her master's degree in public affairs and urban planning has helped her help the city of Hillsborough be more age-friendly. We're so excited to have your panelists in the conversation to enlighten our community here this evening. And now I would like to introduce our moderator, an excellent new staff member who has just made such a difference already for the Los Altos History Museum. I'm absolutely thrilled to have Georgiana Shea as our museum educator, and I'm going to give the seat to her and let her be our moderator for the evening, as she was the curator or co-curator of this exhibition for us, and she's put together all of these public programs. So thank you so much, Georgiana, and thank you everybody else.
Excellent executive director. She took her wine with her. She very, very important. And so it's so lovely to have you all here and actually see your faces and smile. So it's wonderful. And those of you on Zoom, come join us live next time. But we will continue on with our virtual programming as well. I know it's been very popular. So before I get started, I just wanted to, I saw most of you were eating and drinking. I don't know how many of you did your homework out there, but I'm curious if any, and if you didn't, it's okay. But I'm a former teacher, so I have to ask you all those things. But I'm just curious, tonight is really about what we need as a community and as individuals and as city workers and governments. What would be the one thing that you think you would need or would be most important to you when you come to the point where you need to age in place? So just by a show of hands, and you can do this at home too on Zoom. Did anybody think that transportation perhaps would be a big issue to aging in place? Raise your hand if you thought that. Yeah. What about, this sounds funny, but like home maintenance, issues with home maintenance? You know, perhaps you don't want to get up on a ladder, you know, like Gary, fixing our lights here, but, yeah. So I think home maintenance is perhaps another one. And what about, technology? The use of tech, this is why I have my team docents. It's no full, I know I'm starting them early to help me. But technology, is that a concern to anybody? No? Yeah. It is becoming such a way that we do communicate day to day, and it is hard to stay on top of it. I would totally agree with that. So I'm glad that you gave some thought to those things. Those are exactly the things that we're going to be addressing this evening. So without further ado, I'm so excited to have these experts here. It's a complicated matter, and we're going to try and unpack it and call on your expertise. Don't worry. He's like, oh, to kind of, help us and educate us. So what do you think, maybe on the local level, the state level, and the federal level, that we should be, your government should be doing and are doing that can help their citizens continue to live age in place? Are there certain programs? Or?
Well, of course, I would just dive in to the obvious one for me, having gotten involved with cafes, age-friendly initiatives, and hearing all of the community feedback about Santa Clara County and all the cities about what the communities felt were the most important issues, and what domains were those focused. Housing was kept rising to the top. And there's many layers to that, but I was in one particular forum where I was hearing the same kind of story over and over again, and somebody in particular was thinking, I have this property, this is our family property, it has gone back a generation, and I just want to bring my family here to live with me, and why won't they let me? Talking about the city, right? That there was so many hurdles for her to make the modifications on her property in order to support more people in her family, right? And she just wanted to move into her back garden, bring her children into the main house, and she was so exasperated about that. And that was an aha moment for me where, I had been, and I started to go to a lot of housing forums, and I was hearing about the innovations in the construction sector, hearing about the policy innovations, and hearing this real pain point for our community. And that's where I decided to dive in and to try to push on multiple fronts, including, helping to educate the state on what was needed to serve the AU space.
Mandy, because of your urban planning background and working with, I think, more in the government sector, maybe you can add on to that as well.
Yeah, I think government services exist to fill a gap that doesn't exist in the private market. And the private market can be for-profit and it can be non-for-profit. And there are a lot of organizations that exist in both those spaces. The government steps in to provide support or direct services when there is nothing left or there's nobody able to provide it efficiently. We're very fortunate in this area that there are a lot of those organizations that exist. However, what governments can do is they can provide funding or assistance or education that these programs exist to try and connect folks because it's much more efficient than having city staffers with pensions and all that bureaucracy that goes along with it, trying to provide senior services. It's much more efficient to have a nonprofit or even a for-profit organization providing those services. Just because they have the capacity and expertise. In terms of other services, I think there are ways to make existing city services more age-friendly. One example is your trash pickup. That sometimes it's hard to pull the cart all the way out, or some people have that challenge. There are trash providers that offer that service and offer assistance for that. And then there are also nonprofit organizations like the Villages that will match you with volunteers that will do big things like maintenance problems around your house or technology training or just fixing whatever you need technology-wise. But they'll also do things as simple as bringing your trash out, bring your trash in. And those little things can sometimes fall through the cracks. And I think government and these other nonprofit organizations, it's their job to fill as many of those cracks as possible. So from the big things, housing, and then the small things, make sure your trash gets picked up.
Absolutely. I'm curious, who here has heard of or is familiar with the Villages program? Yeah, it's an amazing national, I think it's worldwide. Is it worldwide now?
I believe it's in multiple nations, but
Okay.
it started actually in Beacon Hill. I lived in Boston for 7 years, so and it's really sort of about neighbors helping neighbors, matching community members that have the capacity to volunteer with people that need help. And it's really nice for volunteers because it doesn't require necessarily a long-term commitment. You can sign up and say, you know, I'm only available this day or in this narrow scope. And they can be the handyman that comes and fixes a hand railing for you, or comes and fixes your technology problems. But it also provides basic things such as transportation, taking people where they need. Bringing groceries was a big thing during the pandemic. And the transportation can also be something that's maybe they're taking Uber, but they don't know where to pick up the person. Have you ever had that? In Stanford Shopping Center, it's a big issue. So like they were always getting picked up at the wrong place. And so having that sort of third party help guide those services is really great. And it's sort of just a good way to match the needs of the people that are available to help in the community. And they have the social aspects. I know a lot of them have very competitive games and things like that. But it is what you want out of it. You think you can make it what you want, which I think is really great about the Village. It's customizable.
I mean, what I'm hearing from the both of you is that what we're trying to do is replace communities that have kind of been, I feel people don't live in the same place as they used to. You know, and your family is there to support you. So these are both different ways of supporting seniors as they age by creating a community. And I think they're such wonderful kind of grassroots organizations. And I also think, soon, City of Los Altos, 25% of the population will be over the age of 60. And I think I keep hearing different statistics, maybe one of you knows better, but the first time in history that there are going to be more people over the age of 65 than under 5, I think. I've heard different variations, but we are, people are living longer globally, and we are an aging community. So one of the things I think that's wonderful about living in Los Altos is as David was mentioning, the World Health Organization set up these criteria for age-friendly cities, and I believe Los Altos was it was in 2011, 2012 that they were certified.
Correct.
So they must have been one of the earlier. Were they one of the earlier?
The first.
The very first? Oh, nice.
Yes, in Santa Clara County, after all 15 cities were certified, became the first county.
First county.
Yeah.
Okay, excellent. So I think it's, that's great that this county and this city has been looking for that. But something struck me as I was doing some research for this show that you see the people that were interviewed for this show are all longtime Los Altos residents in the exhibit. I say show, sorry, I have a theater background. It's an exhibit. But they are all ages 65 to 100. And reading through and going through all their videos, the one kind of common thread of why they loved Los Altos was its small town feel and its small village feel. They loved that it didn't have sidewalks. They loved that it didn't have streetlights. They loved, that there wasn't a lot of building or traffic. But I thought, but then those are the things that we need to age in place. We need sidewalks, we need streetlights, we need affordable housing. So I guess my question to both of you is, how can we honor our small town feel here, but also continue to make it a place people can age in place comfortably and safely?
I think we all have these strong connections to our communities and wanting to age in place is part of that. And my dad always calls his house box house because the only way he's leaving is being carried out in a box. Like, I'm never looking, and he does have a strong connection to it, and lives on the 3rd floor, and his stairs do not accommodate the little like roller coaster thing that I always threaten to get him. So it's certainly a consideration that I think of. How am I going to get him to move off that third floor one day? He's fine right now. I'll tell you. But he's not leaving the house because that's the box house. And so you think of ways to make those accommodations, and you have to think creatively. You have to think, okay, that ADU housed me when I was trying to save up money to buy a house in this area. It housed my sister when she was trying to save up money to buy a house in this area. It housed my brother when he was trying to save up money. And is there a way that we could make that first floor more livable for them? And providing that transportation, we're fortunate that we live close to him and that we can assist if he needed to get anywhere and he was unable to drive, that we could step in and provide that transportation. But unfortunately, that's not always the case. And we recognize that we're the minority. We're very lucky that we live close by to my family. But providing that transportation, those basic services, and just going back to the city role, because I have to represent, it's really about making sure that there's that education that these services exist. There are people out there that provide this very small service that you need to fill that gap, and how do you reach that community? And so it's about getting the word out and just connecting folks.
Yeah, I'm really drawn to community-led solutions, and one of the reasons I was so drawn to joining Cafe is their approach to helping cities obtain this age-friendly designation. That really there's a process of identifying a task force that's comprised of long-term members of the community who are really well connected, right? Who can then put together these workshops with broad participation from the community to determine what are the particular elements needed for that particular community across the domains of housing or civic participation or access to information and technology. And just the important thing was to have that civic participation and to have as an outcome. Interesting, when you become an age-friendly city, it's not like you've solved the problem, right? What you've done is you put in place processes and you understand the goals for your community. You put together processes and social participation in that. And yes, there's a monitoring process, right? We certify, but that's kind of how I think the community maintains its characters, because actually the solutions are comprised of the community.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that, I think the answer is education. And like you're talking about, that just to hear people open a dialogue about this, because I'm always astounded when people are kind of wondering why we should have seniors in our community, or what the importance of intergenerational communities are, but some people don't see a value in it. And it's, it's sad. It's very sad. But I think the more we can open dialogues and bring people together, that's going to be, helpful for all of us. So I was also reading something else that the typical,
I just want to say, talking about that, I'm a millennial and I know we get a bad rap, but I really see a lot of benefit, and I see having being able to accommodate multi-generational communities as another form of diversity, because you're interacting with another population that's not like you.
Mm-hmm.
And I was telling George this, when we were talking about this, that I have a neighbor around our block that is older, and he doesn't maintain his property very well, but he's out there trying. I have seen him out there trying, and I'm sure there are folks that drive down the street and just think that he doesn't care, he doesn't maintain it. But I've seen him out there working really hard. It's a lot of work, and I think even my husband's offered to help him once or twice, and he said no. But I don't like that people think that older residents in the community are not taking care of their property, or that they're not proud of their home, because they are. And I have another neighbor on the other side, and she is, I call her kind of like an affordable housing wizard, because she lives in her home and she rents out the extra rooms to Stanford students. And because she lives very close to there, and they also help her with their gardening. So she has a gorgeous garden. And they also seem like they're having a lot of fun doing it. And I like my community and my little block that I walk around with my dog every day that a lot better, because I see those houses and I see those people and I see the pride that they have in their home, and it makes me think that they're proud to be in their community. And why wouldn't somebody want a multi-generational community that accommodates all types of people and groups? And I really advocate for that type of diversity.
Thank you for that. I think we have time for one more question, because I do want to get, I'm sure there are lots of questions for you, both of you. And I think adding on to what you just said, I'll bring up the elephant in the room, which is ageism. And, you know, we talk about diversity in many different ways, but not always, considering that different ages is part of being a diverse community. And Mandy and I were talking the other day, and there are people out there who believe that having seniors in their community devalues their community. And some of the things we heard, not everybody, but some of the things that we've heard and we were talking about were, you know, the seniors have, a lot of them have Prop 13. So they're not, you know, their tax rate is much lower than everybody else's. You know, what else did we were talking the other day? And it's just, they should upgrade their homes. They're bringing down our community property values because they're not updated.
There's the thought that they're not paying their fair share, or that, oh, I'm on the list where I don't pay towards the school district fees. My dad's always like, I want to do that. I want my name to be on that list. But so if they're on there, I'm going to get them.
Awesome. Thanks for throwing him under the bus now.
He's not here,
He's
so I'm
going to love that, yeah.
But yeah, I think that there's that preconception that they're not paying their fair share. I pay more than them, so I should have a bigger voice. And these are the same people that would greatly benefit from that same Prop 13, staying in the community long enough. And I bet when they get to that age and they're living in their home and there's somebody else saying the same thing, their opinion's going to flip. And they need to consider that before they start running their mouth on
Yes.
something.
I think absolutely. And I think, so, I mean, we are hearing a lot about why seniors, you know, shouldn't be in communities, but maybe you can tell us why they should be. Flip it and let us know, you know, the benefits of having seniors in a community, what it brings to the community.
Well, one thing I'll highlight, I mean, there's lots of reasons. I mean, but there's some pretty interesting, like, theoretical economic reasons. Like, there's been a lot of interesting studies in cities like Atlanta and Kansas City, pretty large studies, and also some more theoretical studies being done at MIT around what they call micro GDP. But basically, these studies are showing that having an age-diverse community adds to the economy. And for me, one of the more interesting things about that is, like, it's the more, like, for a given population, it's a more efficient use of businesses and roads and lots of different services, because the different age groups have different characteristics, different times of day that they'll use a road or a business, different types of services. So it's actually, and then there's kind of like the intersection between kind of the feel-good message of, yeah, like you learn from people who are different from you. You know, you have more experience, or you have a new perspective as a younger person. But there's, you know, also, like in marketing, you know, having to do again with economics, like the communication networks, the more diverse, the better, to get the word out. So I like those studies that really show, like, almost at a math level, right, that these communities are healthier.
It is interesting because if you think about even restaurants, you know, you hear a lot like, well, seniors aren't, you know, contributing to our economy. They're not shopping retail. They're not going to restaurants. But they are, what they're not looking at is, but the times they would go would be downtimes for restaurants
That's
anyway.
right.
Right?
Yeah.
So using that as a strength.
Yep.
For that, yeah, absolutely. So, well, I think I've talked enough. I think we'll open it up for questions. So if you're online, I know you can post something in the chat and we're happy to take your questions. We're happy to take anybody's questions live. I'm sure you'd love to talk about ADUs. We know that's it's a very hot topic right now, I know, but it is a viable solution and an interesting solution to a lot of our housing, especially where we live here in this area. So let's see, does anybody, can I take any questions, or do we have any questions online? I'm monitoring the chat here. Yes.
Yeah, I do have a question about ADUs, actually. About 5 or 6 years ago, we were pretty seriously talking about putting one in our yard.
Yeah.
So that family can visit, or so that, maybe for a caretaker at some point. We've heard about a lot of different uses. And I just read horror stories about getting permits and, what a difficult process it is. And I wonder if you could speak to that a little bit.
Yes, absolutely. So, a few years ago, in 2019, the state rolled out some new ADU legislation that was meant to, that comes down to the city level, that basically largely removes ADUs from a big part of permitting, which has to do with the planning department. So the granting an ADU permit is a lot more objective, right? As long as it's under a certain size, as long as it's within certain boundaries of the property, it shall be approved. And then the burden of the permit is really on just it being a safe place to live, the building department. So that's something that's been broadly helpful in communities, and that's why we've seen a really large increase in ADUs in our communities. One of the big reasons. For what it's worth, there's continued effort on ADU legislation to try to clean up some of the kinks that are remaining. So it's part of the reason why I got into the ADU space is not just because of the houses themselves, but because it was becoming such a big mechanism at the policy level. So there's lots of conversations. It's become a really important device at the state and city level.
Yeah, and I think what he's speaking to is the state trying to craft policy that makes it as easy as possible and streamlines it and removes that discretionary, we don't like the way it looks, we don't like where it's placed on the property. The state basically took a lot of that away and said, as long as it's this size and it's within this amount of feet from the property line, you're good to go. And the local governments can add a little bit of objective criteria to that, but not really that much. And that's why you see and you hear those horror stories of, oh my gosh, my neighbor built an ADU right next to our property line. They took out this gorgeous tree. Is there anything we can do? No, because the state put those requirements in. And some of those kinks, and I think that's why they get a bad reputation a lot of the time. But the concept itself is very positive, speaking as someone who benefited directly from the presence of an ADU. But I do think that it's something to watch, because I think that the state is looking to expand those streamlining. I think they're wanting them to be bigger. I think they're wanting them to be a little bit faster in some way. They really like the people that push that policy see that as a success. And so watching that policy at the state level where it can be changed versus at the local level, and the cities get handed this policy and there's very little that they can do to fight it. It really comes with the lobbying level and at the state legislators. So call your state representative if you don't like the ADU next year.
Excellent. Okay, I think we have a question. Somebody wanted the name of the organization that provides the services for seniors, such as trash. I think that was the Villages.
Some villages, a lot of times will allow for that, but also check with like Recology or Green Waste, whoever's doing it. Sometimes they have a service and you need to ask for it. I don't know if they charge you for it. I feel like they shouldn't, but that's my personal opinion, not fact. But I would check your solid waste provider, maybe ask your local agency, and then villages would also be able to match you with somebody in your community.
I think, and one of the things that the WHO on their checklist is communication, I believe, right? Was
Yes.
one. And I think for me, I like to think I'm pretty savvy. But I found a lot of things online that I didn't know were services right here that we had. And I don't think, I personally, I don't think we do a good job of getting the information that's out there. There are services out there, but I think people don't know about them. So on your way out, we collected a lot of flyers and information for you. And if anybody on Zoom would like those, leave your name in the chat, and we're happy to send you out PDFs of all those. But we did get some very good information about services and, at the community level, at the state level.
And the county, don't sleep on the county. The county provides a lot of services. I mean, during COVID, you saw Sarah Cody's space absolutely everywhere. So they provide a lot of health services, and they consolidate a lot of the services that exist in the county. So always check the county website. I feel like they get forgotten a lot of the time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Totally agree. And this area is very special, actually, in the amount of services that do exist, and the people at the county, and even here in the senior commission. It's like there's so many people who know about these services, and they're really dedicated and energized about helping. But somehow, we need more communication. So these things do. You can seek out the right people and tell your friends about this.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yes, question.
David, it's nice to see you.
Good to see you.
I'm a senior commissioner for Los Altos, and we are very actively seeking to be recertified. We're 5 years out of date, and so it's time. And the senior commission, in effect, is a lobby group for my peers. Though people who are active hesitate to call themselves seniors, and they reserve that for somebody who's just been admitted to the ICU. So we seek people's input on what are the current unmet needs, because in case you haven't noticed, the world has permanently changed. And things that were useful either have been done or become less necessary. So we really are looking to find out the unmet needs that exist in Los Altos at this time. So is it okay to put out my contact information?
Sure, or we can send it out to everybody as well.
I've got some business
Happy to do
cards.
that.
So that would be very, very useful for us, because we really do serve the city. So some of the commissions don't seem to be very active.
But we'd be more than happy to get the word out and help spread the word. And one thing that struck me as you were talking is people don't like to be called seniors, and I think that's sad. You go to almost any other place in the world, well, not any other, but certain places in the world, seniors are revered and respected, and that is a word that you keep in reverence for somebody who has wisdom and knowledge and years of experience. So I find it in our community, it kind of is sad that we don't embrace that word more. But I understand it. I don't want to be called a senior. I mean, I do, but I maybe you two can change that.
It's also why you see so many senior centers named after somebody rather than called the senior center.
That's
They always name it after somebody so they can call it that instead.
Very true.
Because people don't like it.
But whatever our age is, we're all elders in training.
Yeah, that's true. But we're going to get there one way or another, right? Yes. Pat, I think, did you have a question?
I wanted to find out if you have any statistics on the demographics of who's using ADUs. Are they the seniors? Are they your parents? Who are they?
We were just talking about this before the whole session, is that it's very hard to capture data on who's currently using it. And I know in Hillsborough, we send out surveys and we try to get information back, and we partner with HIP Housing, which is an organization that you can apply and they'll sort of match you with somebody that has an ADU available. And we can get some data from them, but it is a gap. I mean, it's something, a hole that is missing, and the information that we get from these surveys we send out to the community, we understand that it's imperfect. And while the state is giving sort of housing credit to these ADUs, whether or not they're always solving the problem or working to their 100% effectiveness, probably not. But hopefully that's something that can be better attacked in the future, and then at least the surveys are better than nothing. So if you do get an ADU survey, respond to it, because it'll help inform future decision making for elected officials.
I can speak to what we've seen for our customer base, and I have spoken more broadly out in the space. It seems that so for us, I think for us it's a bit biased because we're kind of out in the market saying that we have age-friendly ADUs, and that's the creating the multi-generational property and having a unit that has universal design, which is like a design that sort of has broad applicability across ages. So all that said, about 2/3 of our customers are coming to us for ADUs that are serving the family needs, where there's an older adult that's either right now part of the equation or they're thinking one step ahead. So right now it might be their student their college-age child, but then they're thinking they're going to be moving in next or bring something else. Now there's, about 1/3 of our customers are coming to us asking about rentals, as a first step. Most of those people are actually living on the properties. It's a pretty small minority of folks who don't live on the property and looking to add a unit to rent, which I know that was a big part of the pushback for ADUs. But that we haven't seen a lot of that.
I'm happy to hear that people are thinking ahead, because I read a study that said the typical senior spends less time planning for sustainability aging in place than they do for planning their next vacation. So, and it's really, which is true, and it's, and if you wait too long, it becomes too late. It's hard. So to think about renting it out and making it in phases, I think is a wonderful thing.
Yeah, I've been really actually super impressed by how educated our prospective customers seem to be. I mean, they're really thinking through this, and that it can be there can now be the cycle, like it increases the flexibility on the property, and also the fact that just adding the unit itself in many cases is adding to the property value. So makes sense all around.
It does, and I will say this is, I get no commission, but you should go and look on the website. The beautiful units, like I would move it tomorrow. They're gorgeous. That just because what are like 507 different square feet, but they're really nice. I mean, I think it's an amazing opportunity for people. It gives people another option. It's all about choices, so it's great to have there.
Yeah, the design part of it is really what was leading us, right? Is we wanted to make sure that we had units that work well for people for their families.
Yeah, they're beautiful. Any other questions? I'm checking. Yes.
So in the Silicon Valley, we have a unique housing situation because of our property values. So anybody in this room who's been in their house for a long time has a huge amount of money sitting there that could help them age, but they would pay capital gains on it. So is there anything being done at the national level to address these types of communities? Because we're not unique. There's other communities like this throughout the United States. But for example, my kids are the millennials. So they're like, oh, not them particularly, but their generation is saying the boomers are so greedy, they're staying in their big homes and they don't need them. But we would like to buy their homes, but we can't afford to move out, because we would move out of a large, nice house into a condo somewhere and for equal value. So we're going to stay in our homes. So the only way to do that is to kind of change the capital gains thing as far as I can see. So is there anything on the horizon that would help that.
I would also add, or people move out of the area and then they lose their support system.
Right.
And everything, which is also traumatic.
Correct.
I mean, I know that there is you can keep your property tax if you move, program set up, and I think in a misguided way, SB 9 was the state trying to solve that problem by saying, oh, just build a second unit and your family can live with you. And that was, in their minds, a solution that also satisfied the builder community. But I don't know of anything being done specifically on the gains taxes. I think that is a huge problem for this area as well as Southern California. And it is certainly an explanation of why people stay in their homes. I don't necessarily think staying in our homes is a bad idea, but it is burdensome to have to take care of that level of property. And then now you have the drought and you have all this grass left over and now you have to do landscape and then that's expensive. It just sort of spirals out of control. And so these programs that exist, these rebates and programs exist, taking advantage of absolutely every rebate program that exists from the county, from the state, from your local government, because there is inaction on that area. And the solutions that the state is coming up with the SB 9 and these other sort of adding housing onto existing properties, they're imperfect currently. So, but it's certainly something that will hopefully be next discussion of legislature solutions, I guess. That's what I think.
Curious, so what would you like to do?
Oh, well, actually, I got a permit for an ADU. I live in Mountain View, but I've lived in Los Altos Mountain View for many, many, many years. And it was really easy to get the permit, but my thought was I could create an income stream by renting out. I have a small house, not very big. But I could rent that out and I could live in the ADU because the ADU was going to be really nice. But then the cost, I decided not to do it because of the cost. Because for that cost that it would be, which is like $400,000, I could buy a house in another state. So, it's like, it's all balances.
It also sometimes takes a crisis, right? Because I feel like people don't realize that you can live in a smaller square footage until COVID happens and your entire family's suddenly on top of each other, like living in the same house, and you realize, okay, at that square footage, I think I could probably do it. If I can handle this, then sometimes you can see a little bit of being more realistic.
I have a question from Zoom. What problems have you seen that people are facing because of intergenerational miscommunication? And also, how can we educate a large community about that? Do you see any problems like with multi-generational communities and perhaps miscommunication, maybe even about some of these things like ADUs and
Miscommunication. I mean, one thing that's occurred to me, I don't know if it's miscommunication per se, but being on the Environmental Commission and kind of engaging at that level, the community discussions in those meetings is largely driven by older adults. Like we don't see a lot of participation in those meetings from younger people, and it's disconnected communication. It's not necessarily but I think of it as a miscommunication because one group of people is coming in and influencing decisions, and another group of people feels like they're not connected to the decision making. And so I don't know why there's not they don't know that they can engage and at that level.
I think it's different priorities because you have school-age children, you're very involved in the school district, and you're at all those meetings, you're maybe you're not, but you should be, and figuring out what's happening in the district. And then your kids grow up, and then you sit in the city council meetings, and then you really learn what's going on in your community at the council level and that policy level. But getting younger folks involved in these boards and commissions is critical. I serve on the Parks and Recreation Commission in Palo Alto because I love Palo Alto and because I want to represent a younger voice on the commission. And as someone who grew up in those parks and what I remember. And I think that folks that age out of the school district system, they should still be involved in sort of that cross-pollination among groups. Just because we have different priorities doesn't mean the voices don't need to be heard at either decision-making body meeting.
That's great, great answer. Well, I want to be respectful of everybody's time, and I think that's a wonderful note to end on. We do want to bring people together, make sure everybody's voice is heard. So I hope you've enjoyed this, and a big round of applause and thank you to our I hope you enjoyed this new format, a little shorter, and we'll be sending out a little survey. You can give us feedback. We'd appreciate hearing your thoughts on that.
Well, and I wanted to just thank Georgiana for putting this together. This was definitely a great sort of sippancy to begin with. Nice conversation, wonderful panel. Thank you, Georgiana. Thank you. This is a big way that the museum is fulfilling its vision to be the premier local center for intergenerational and intercultural connections. So we really appreciate this opportunity. As you said, this is a community, you know, at an age not based on any other demographics other than their age, but it's still a unique community, and we want to make sure all the communities in our area have a chance to have their views and their opinions heard here at the Los Altos History Museum. So thank you for facilitating this, and thank you both for being here tonight. The museum is having a big fundraiser on April 2nd, and you would all be invited back. It is actually, we're going to be celebrating the 1920s. And I was just thinking about miscommunications wise, I wonder if they were meaning sort of just language usage, some of the terminology and some of the, you know, so there can be, and we've been trying to find a film to show at our fundraiser that doesn't have something that, you know, today we go, we wouldn't make that joke, we wouldn't make that joke, we wouldn't make that joke. So, you know, there's a lot of ways that I think this communication between generations is challenging and interesting, and one that's changing so rapidly for us too. So anyhow, you're all welcome back to Los Altos History Museum April 2nd if you'd like to put on the Ritz a little bit. And thank you both so much, and congratulations.
Thank you. Thanks everybody.